The hills of LA. Got Beverly Hills, you got the Hollywood Hills, Rollin Hills, and you got Palos Verdes, one of the wealthiest communities in all of California, home to people like Rod Stewart and Joe Montana, home of the wealthy, some of the top celebrities, people with a whole lot of money, tucked away in gated communities, far, far away from the concrete jungle that is the streets of Los Angeles, home of over 400 gangs. One of those gangs hailing from South Los Angeles, Rollin 90s Crips. Now, concrete jungle of Los Angeles and the hills of California really don't have much of a reason to collide. But in 2017, a young man by the name of Cameron TERRELL would have these two worlds collide in a major way. Growing up, Cameron TERRELL had the epitome of the silver spoon life. His father, Donald TERRELL, was a CEO of a multimedia firm, and his mother, Deborah TERRELL, was an interior decorator with many high-profile clients. Young Cameron stayed dressed in designer clothes. He lived in a $2 million home. He had a Mercedes-Benz that he would drive to Palos Verdes High. He got a very generous allowance from his parents. I mean, he had everything a kid could ask for. And from the outside looking in, the TERRELLs looked like, an all-American family. Lavish vacations, happy pictures, all of that. But internally, it was completely different. Young Cameron had started to rebel against his parents. It began to be a lot of fights and arguments, and Cameron would often run away. And one of the places that he would run away to is South Central Los Angeles, the concrete jungle. Now you gotta ask yourself, why would a young man from Palos Verdes, way out, come all the way to South Central to run away from his wealthy parents? There's many different ideas of how it happened. One theory is he got it through a drug connection, that he would go to the area to buy drugs, and they eventually took a liking to him and he started hanging out. The second one is he made connections through social media, but either way, he was in there. He was in South Central, in the trenches, and he would live with his friends out there for weeks and months at a time, to the point where he was calling their mom his mom. He got that close. And just so happened that the person he was living with ended up getting recruited by the Rollin 90s Crips. And they began to recruit Cameron as well. And he was more than eager to take him up on the offer. He was jumped in at Jesse Owens Park, a known stronghold of the Rollin 90s Crips. They gave him the nicknames of Milk and White Boy. He got the W tattooed on his chest that stood for Western Avenue. Western Avenue goes through the heart of Rollin 90s territory. So Cameron was definitely 10 toes down in the gang life. Drugs, robbery, and eventually murder. He could be seen on Instagram with his guys. He could be seen in music videos as well. One of them was called the NH Anthem. It's basically a song about all of the neighborhood Crips, their alliance, and being under that banner. You can see him in the video front and center with the colors on, repping the set. But the fantasy that Cameron had been living of becoming an infamous gangbanger in a Rollin 90s Crip was about to come to an abrupt stop, because on Sunday, October 1st, 2017, a young man by the name of Justin Holmes was walking with two of his friends on the 7800 block of Southwestern Avenue in Manchester Square. They were approached by two men who asked them where they were from. And when Justin replied, "I don't gangbang," he was shot twice. The two people he was with were shot at as well, but they managed to escape. His friends would try to get him help, but it was too late. Justin Holmes would pass away less than an hour after the incident. Police arrived on scene and pretty much chalked it up as a gang-related shooting because they were in 8 Trey gangster territory and known rivals of the Rollin 90s Crips. But in the coming weeks, they would learn that it was much, much more to the story. Because on October 12th, Cameron TERRELL was arrested, along with the two people that he was with. Their information wasn't released because they were minors at the time of the shooting, but Cameron TERRELL's information was released. And when the media got a hold of a white kid from Palos Verdes, California, linking up with Crips in South Central LA and committed murders, it set off a media firestorm. The novelty of it was just too much. It was like Malibu's Most Wanted gone terribly, terribly wrong. Heading into the trial, the prosecution had overwhelming evidence against Cameron TERRELL, including video evidence of his black Mercedes-Benz picking up the two assailants. They also had the music videos he had been on and tattoos that he had representing the Rollin 90s Crips. And it was also discovered that Justin Holmes was not a gang member. He was actually a college student who had a job at U-Haul and was just enjoying a day off from work with his friends. Nothing more, nothing less. Cameron's attorney, Javon Blacknell, would use the defense of Cameron didn't know what was going on, that when he picked the two men up, he had no idea that they were going to do any type of shooting, and he was actually surprised when he heard gunshots. And as for his tattoo, the W tattooed on his chest, he said that it's just a way for him to pay homage to his favorite basketball player, Kevin Durant. And when the prosecution came with evidence of a video that was taken by Cameron TERRELL of Rollin 90s Crips kicking over candles at the vigil for Justin Holmes, his attorney simply said that Cameron didn't know the difference between right and wrong because of his upbringing, and he was living in a fantasy world, and he just didn't know about real life consequences. It took the jury a week to deliberate on the fate of Cameron TERRELL, and when the verdict came down, he was not guilty on all charges. Cameron TERRELL walked out of court a free man, and this is what he had to say.
I'd say rest in peace, Justin Holmes. He shouldn't have died that day, and I pray for his family every night. This been weighing on me every single day of my life. So I don't have to explain myself to anyone. God knows what really happened that day, and God knows what was in my head that day.
And this verdict would cause outrage in the black community because the question was, how can the two black teens be tried as adults when the actual adult in the case be let go completely free? But in the end, none of it really mattered. Cameron TERRELL returned back to his luxury lifestyle, driving top-of-the-line cars, attending World Series games, and attending Palos Verdes High. At least for a time he attended Palos Verdes High, because the parents at the school, they started to voice their concerns over having Cameron there because they knew about the case. They knew what he was affiliated with. So eventually Cameron was forced to go home for homeschooling. And this incident also affected his mom and his dad's business. The community kind of started to shun the family, but he still worked out at the end because Cameron would go on to attend the University of Houston until 2019, when he was arrested for a carjacking that had occurred when he was down with the Rollin 90s Crips. His lawyer responded to the arrest by saying that he's a model student at the University of Houston and that this arrest is just interrupting his studies. But I believe that Cameron will find a way to avoid these charges as well. I mean, with the power that his mom and dad has, with the money that he has behind him, I mean, even for the murder charge, he sat in jail for less than a week. I mean, then they came up with the $500,000 bond, and he was a free man again. So I don't think much would come of the new charges against him. But what's most important in this story is Justin Holmes, is that we lost the life of a young black king over absolutely nothing. And he did not deserve that at all. And Justin Holmes was only 21 years old when he died. Rest in peace.